The following is a review for critical, analytical, and educational purposes only, and is protected under Article 17 and 107 in the United States Fair Use Code. This video is not an infringement on copyright. Please enjoy the video.
2011's Rise of the Planet of the Apes was one of the biggest surprises for me in recent memory. It came at a time where everyone was really starting to question the credibility of reboots, and I thought the marketing material was pretty poor, but in the end it wound up as my joint third best movie of the year, and is one of the many examples that I point to where I was expecting a movie to be bad, but actually wound up loving it, because for some reason people think that I go into movies wanting to hate them, but let's not forget that those people are incredibly stupid, and while I don't think that Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is quite as good as Rise, it is still an incredibly strong movie and one of the best of 2014's summer offerings. Anyway, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes takes place sometime after the events of the previous movie, in which humans and apes have been separated, with the apes thriving in their own society and the humans on the brink of extinction without power. There are some great moments of subtle commentary, as humans have grown to become dependent on electricity, not just for survival but for emotional sentiments, as Gary Oldman's character is unable to see pictures of his family on his tablet device without electricity, and it's a great visual touches like this which helps to elevate Dawn into becoming an incredibly smart and powerful sci-fi film, even in the subtle touches, because while there are some predictable parts of the movie, as it's the same Western settlers type of narrative that we've seen a dozen times before, it's able to get around that by offering something very different, and that is through the advent of motion capture. The apes in this movie look terrific, and while I could talk for hours about how amazing Andy Serkis is as Caesar, I would actually like to bring up how brilliant Toby Kebbell is as the second-in-command Cobra, Nick Thurston as Caesar's son Blue Eyes, and Karen Knovel as Maurice. Maurice in particular is probably the most realistic looking of the apes, but because of the incredible performances and the technology of motion capture, the apes aren't just great CGI creations, but they're creatures of heart and soul. You can look into the eyes of one of these creatures and see real humanity, and this is easily the best use of motion capture to date. But the real ace under Dawn's sleeve here is that it's not just a black and white dynamic. Obviously real conflicts are made up of shades of grey, but there's so much grey here and so much conflict throughout the movie that you are on the edge of your seat watching the events unfold in front of you. Just who the real enemy of the movie is constantly in question, but because of that, it means everyone is utterly sympathetic and their state of mind is completely believable, even if it's not the right course of action. The action is also terrific as well, and while the choreography is great, as is the image of apes riding on horses while dual-wielding machine guns that never need reloading for some reason, what stood out to me was the visual storytelling told throughout the sequences. There's real thought going into the composition here when the action is taking place, like how the hunting scene at the very beginning is almost repeated in the final fight scene at the end, but the movie doesn't shove that in your face, but helps to enforce the themes of the movie through the visuals, and one shot in particular, a 360-degree camera move around a tank, is possibly the very best single camera shot of 2014 so far, and while the images and action sequences are awesome and well done, there's some brutality at play here, some savage beatings and merciless killings that left my screening in total shock and actually brought a few people close to tears, and the entire enterprise is held together by an excellent score by Michael Giacchino. But as I said earlier, I feel like Rise of the Planet of the Apes is the stronger of the two, and the reason for this is because of the pace and the human characters. There's no better example I can give other than John Lithgow's character in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, who is infinitely more compelling than every character in Dawn combined. It kind of feels like the scenes with the human characters, while not necessarily bad, are on autopilot. I didn't hate spending time with them, but because of how well structured and thought out the ape dynamic and the script structure of cause and effect is laid out in their scenes, it just shows how flat the human scenes are. Jason Clarke is good in the movie, even though he does feel miscast for the role, and his character doesn't really undergo any sort of arc. He doesn't change at all over the course of the movie, meaning there's no momentum to his scenes other than what the other characters give him. Kerry Russell is underused, Cody Smith-McPhee has no characterizations other than likes to draw, and Gary Oldman, while really great in the movie, does not get enough screen time. What's baffling though is that there's one guy in the cast who comes across as the guy the audience are supposed to hate, because he just keeps messing up, but in one scene he says that he hates the apes, and he hates how he's supposed to be the bad guy. With that moment, I thought the movie was going to explain his point of view or give him a decent rationale for what he was doing, but then the movie never did. Guys, you can't just say that a character has motivations for doing what he does, but then not give him a motivation. It's the illusion of character, and since the movie spends a large amount of time dwelling on this illusion, it means the movie ends up feeling a bit long. But that's not to say that the apes are perfect, as Caesar is hardly given any screen time with his wife, who has zero impact on the overall story, and while the relationship with Blue Eyes and Koba is interesting, the relationship between Blue Eyes and Caesar actually felt very underdeveloped. But the movie is able to transcend these problems because the ape scenes are so good, and the overall emotional hook of the movie works so well. It works a lot better as a whole than it does in pieces, and it ends on an incredibly powerful note. I'm actually tempted to make a video on why the ending is so great, because it seems like a lot of people don't quite understand what is happening in the final scene, but that's for another time. Either way, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is a smart, engaging and action-packed movie that builds on the very solid foundations left by the first one. The effects are amazing, the performances from the apes are great, and I look forward to seeing what happens in the third installment, slated for summer 2016. I give Dawn of the Planet of the Apes 4 stars out of 5.
Are you aware they are going to turn on you? They don't want a war. No, don't shoot! Caesar, you have to go. Go? Where? Apes! Together! Strong!
War, it's not what you want. There must be another way.
War has already begun.